guys, Yoku here to bring you another cosplay workshop today. I just got back a little bit ago from my March photo shoot, so I have fabulous wig hair, but it seemed like a good time to film it. So today we're going to talk about patterning. I'm going to talk about pre-made patterns, improvising using pre-made patterns, and making paper patterns of your own. Presented by me. There's all my social media like usual. Photo up top is from Rose City Comic Con last year. It was featuring our League of Legends Yordles meets Mario Party crossover group. Pretty fun. Got a Teemo Mario. I was Princess Peach Lulu. We had a Bowser Poppy and a Luigi Tristana. Super fun. Great stuff. So first we're going to go over what is patterning. So the definition of patterning is to give a regular or intelligible form to something that doesn't necessarily have one. Types of patterning include pre-made patterns, which you can buy in stores or online. You can also use online tutorials, which I'm going to talk about later. Modifying a store-bought pattern, or using a similar design of something you would already own. Or making your own via paper and draping on a dress form, which if you're going to do draping, you're going to need to have a dress form for. And that is my original Vaporeon design. I did that completely from scratch. I had a dress in my closet, a couple of them actually, that I really liked some of the forms going on in, and I talk about this later, but I just basically laid the dresses out flat, looked where the seams were, did my measurements, kind of estimated, made some patterns, tried things on, and I basically came up with a pattern that way, which ended up being my Vaporeon. So when you're using pre-made patterns, those could be buying patterns from places like Joann's or any fabric or pattern store, or using online tutorials for things like tiny top hats or Sailor Moon bows. You have seen me make a lot of Sailor Moon bows now. I use the same bow pattern for everything, which is Sparkle Pipsy's pattern. I'll put it below in the comments for you. And those are examples of bows that I made using an online pattern that I cut out on 8.5 by 11 paper, and she has already sized it properly, so some of it bleeds over 2 pages. You just cut it, and patterns always tell you what you need to do. These were examples of, this was from Sakizou's Cafe Latte, which I wore to NewCon MiniCon last summer, long time ago. These were all pieces from store-bought patterns that I used and then modified. For example, the skirt, which you can't see super well under the belt in the second photo, and I'll give you a bigger blown-up photo, is pulled up, so I have a skewed hemline. I added extra ruffling and buttons to the one on the left in where the blouse is. So I had store patterns. I used those to get the general, and then I just modified it, added maybe a slip of paper here, or just changed it at the end, made things a little longer, a little shorter. It's pretty easy to do as long as you understand the pattern you're working with in the first place. Here's that Vaporeon costume again. This was a similar design of something I owned. Shows you some examples of kind of what the top looked like, how I constructed some of these pieces. It was a really simple panel skirt. So yeah, just kind of gives you an idea of that. So making your own pattern using paper, I use cheap sketchbook paper and invisible tape. I get like bigger the sketchbook I find, the better, at like Goodwills and garage sales, and they're great for patterns. I use them all the time. On the left is a pattern on my dress form. That was me trying to mark out the shapes. I have darts in there where it's folded over. That was me trying to figure out Kurami Zell from No Game No Life, because I made her coat jacket thing the first time using a pattern, and I hated it. I hated it so much that even though it was done, I didn't take it to con because it was terrible. It was awful, and I swore I was going to remake it, and I eventually did, and I really liked it, and I took it to Anime Expo, so that worked out really well. But I did use a pattern the first time, didn't like it, so I improvised the second time, going into it a little better, knowing what I needed, what I didn't, those sorts of things. But as mentioned, you need to have a dress form for this. So here's some more on Kurami Zell. After I had the paper pattern with the approximate shapes I wanted and I cut everything out, then I went into something called draping. And as I've said many times, I've never had formal seamstress, sewing, fashion, none of that training. I didn't go to school. I've never taken a class. Everything I learned is from the internet. And this is using fabric where you drape it to make the shapes you want. It's best if you use extra fabric, muslin, really cheap cotton, anything you have lying around. Try not to use your actual fabric. Just an idea. I might have done things and bought more fabric and done more things and had to buy more fabric. Don't do it. If you can avoid it, avoid it. But yeah, use extra fabric to kind of figure out those shapes. I used the liner on this. So, as promised, I put this together with the help from my Bunnysuit for May, which I premiered this a little bit ago. And then we won the journeyman level for the cosplay contest. So this was the first time I'd ever made a Bunnysuit. I had an approximate idea what I was getting into. I'd heard some horror stories. I've seen some cool things. I know they're kind of expensive to buy flat out. I knew I was going to have to work with boning and multiple layers of canvas. So I knew all this going into it, but at the same time, I didn't really acknowledge how much work it was going to actually be. So this Bunnysuit is a perfect example of combining everything together. So I bought a pattern, and I thought the pattern was going to be perfect. Wouldn't have to make any changes. It'd be great. Very early on in the pattern, she says, this pattern is not a one-size-fits-all, and you're going to have to modify it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to modify it. So I cut out the paper, and I tried testing panel sections with the paper, and I very quickly know, oh, I'm going to need more curve here, so she has an extra section for putting more curve in the side. I'm like, oh, you know, this is really long in my crotch, so I cut the crotch a little bit, and I modify it very approximately with the pattern, because you're working with paper, you're not working with fabric. Things are going to stretch and form to your body differently. And how a single panel looks on you versus how it's going to look all together is going to be different. So these are all things you have to keep in mind. So the first picture shows you the pattern before I cut it out. Second picture shows you that it's for pattern sizes 16 to 22. She talks about what direction the grains are. She talks about finding your measurement and how to lay it out on the fabric. It's a great Bunnysuit pattern as a base. There's also Yaya Han's Bunnysuit pattern as a base, which the rest of my group used. Both of those are really good. But no, you're going to have to modify it to fit your body. That bottom photo shows everything. It's kind of cheating. It's like way further down. Shows all my 3 layers. So my cotton, my canvas, and my satin. And the cotton is interfaced in that photo. All cut out, all sewn together, not flattened yet. But that's what it all kind of looked like together. Give you an idea. So combining it all continued. After I cut out the paper to approximately what I thought I needed, I cut it out into the cotton, which is my liner. It's what's touching my skin. And I know that if I have any screw-ups, it's not going to matter because you won't see it. Because I was too lazy to get extra fabric. Don't do that. Get extra fabric. I modified it a good 3 to 4 additional times. So I'd put it on and be like, none of this fits properly. Let's bring it in here and bring it in here. So I'd kind of like pin where it needs to be brought in. And this is flipped inside out. And so then I'd sew around where the pins are and I'd try it on again. And then I'd say, oh man, you know, I need a dart up here. And so I'd draw a triangle with my chalk or pencil fabric of where that needs to be, and it's flipped inside out, so the seams are facing out. And, you know, I kept just modifying it, and then my dress form was the approximate size of what I was, and the cautionary tale of dress forms is they don't fit like real people do. They have a lot less give than real people do, and they have shoulders that don't move, and Her boobs sit kind of funny, so just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. When I actually put it on the dress form, it was huge. It was way too big. I thought it was big on my body, but I couldn't really tell because you can't actually like pin yourself into a bunny suit while you're doing mock-ups. So you're kind of guessing the whole entire time. And once you have one good one, then you'll forever just use that over and over again. You'll make an actual pattern for yourself. So yeah, I had to keep changing it. Go to like 3 to 4 times. Before I finally got something, I'm like, okay, I think this is going to work. We're going to go with it. I won't really be able to tell till it's done, but let's hope for the best. So there's that photo again with everything cut out, and nothing's ironed down yet. Then in the canvas, I went ahead and I started with 19 channels of boning. Yeah, into the canvas, and then everything's sewn together, according to the tutorial that she sent with the pattern. That's a photo of it sewn together. Just the satin layer, so none of the other layers are attached on there yet. Alright, so none of these photos were released. They were only sent to my group to give them an idea of how much progress I've done. But it gives you a really good idea of kind of what I was working with. Initially, I put a zipper in the back because that's what the pattern called for, and it was beautiful and it was invisible and you never would have seen it. But it was really hard to get up the small of my back because there's a lot of curves there, and the zipper didn't want to give for the curves. So I could zip it on and off, up and down with it off my body. But because someone had to zip me in every time, they would have a lot of trouble. So I kept putting a hook and eye at the top, 2 hook and eyes at the top, try and make it a little easier. Then we put 2 hook and eyes in like the middle of it to bring it together. And eventually on the very last test fit, the zipper just snapped. He completely snapped it off, and it was totally accidental. It wasn't his fault. The zipper just had too much pressure on it, and I didn't have a good idea what I was working with. The zipper wasn't very good. It wasn't very strong. And it snapped. And that happened on Friday, the day before the convention, and I panicked. But I fixed it. We'll see how I fixed it. But this gives you an idea of, this was my first test fit, of how it fit. Now, in a lot of places, it looks like it's too big, but it was pretty close to my skin. It wasn't going anywhere. Is that odd, like, bump shape in the front, which I can really easily see it. A lot of people can't see it, but I can. That's from my boning. I have a floating liner is what it's called. So the liner isn't sewn down on the bottom, so it can move around as I move, and it gives me a little more flexibility and give. But what ends up happening is my boning was sticking out like this and creating that terrible shelf and shadowing, which just looked bad. And I hated it, and it was driving me nuts. So what I ended up doing is I ended up seam ripping out the bottom sections of my bunnysuit, going in and removing the 2 pieces of interfacing that were, or not interfacing, boning that were right here. So I left the 2 on the sides, and there was none in the middle. I just took the 2 out that were right here. And I left the ones on the seams, and I left the ones right here, which, I don't know, give or take. I would have left the ones in the seams either way, and maybe the ones on the sides I would have taken out, because it's just creating just this awful shelf. But by the time it was done, you really couldn't tell as much, as soon as I took out those 2 middle ones. So, the zipper broke, and all the fur was sewn down, everything was sewn down, it was all ready to go. I panicked for like an hour, and I sat down and I said, all right, Lauren, you gotta fix this. You're taking it to competition, you've spent so much time on it, everybody is going to look great, so you need to look great. So I did what Sage had done. Her diva is laced in the back, and her diva starts about like right here, and then goes up, because her hips aren't quite as wide as mine. And so she was able to slip her bunny suit over. But the way that my zipper was, and the way that my hips are, and the way my bunny suit is, I had to start my lacing and zipper about here. So right about mid-butt, and then it goes all the way up. So after the zipper fiasco, thought about it, and I'm like, all right, we're going to put lacing in like all my corsets. I'm very familiar with this. It'll be great. It won't be what I thought, but it'll be great. So I went down to my fabric place, matched my fabric colors, used silver grommets, and grommeted those all in. I had to cancel my plans that night because I was just in a panic, and it worked. It worked great. And I really wish I had more high quality photos to show you guys, but the photographers just haven't gotten back to me yet. But those will be released and you'll be able to see it. What have I, and there's a finished photo, but what have I learned from making a bunny suit? I need more mock-ups. It was a lot of work. I severely underestimated it. The people that do this are crazy and amazing. And I will be making more bunny suits, maybe like 4 in the next year. So I like it. I look good in them. I just need more practice. Oh, the one other thing I learned is that you can see it behind me. This bunny suit, this is the crotch area, right? I can't circle backwards in the mirror. It's all one piece. So if I wanted to go to the bathroom, which happened after about 4 hours of being in it, pretty reasonable, someone had to completely unlace me. I had to go to the bathroom, then they had to lace me back up. And that's hard, it's difficult, people don't appreciate it. So, doing a bunny suit, put snaps in the bottom. I will be doing this before PAX because heaven knows whoever's going to be lacing me into that is not going to want to do it more than once or twice that day. And if I'm wearing it all day at PAX, which is going to be, 8 to 10 hours, and I'll probably have to go to the bathroom more than once. Just put silver snaps in the bottom and out. A little TMI for people, but we're talking about costuming and pattern. We could talk about this. Top of my bunny suit still had those grommets. They're hidden underneath the fur very well. The fur velcros together on the backs so you don't see it. Looks nice and clean. We won awards for it. The boning's all great. But yeah, so back to what we're actually talking about is patterning in this and improvising. Lots of improvising, lots of learning, and you end up with really cool things that you're pretty happy with in the end. So that's what I got, guys. Talk about this more, if you guys want to. Questions, comments, put in below. Definitely remember to check out that basics one where I actually go over how to read a pattern. If you're purchasing one, I'll give you guys links to the bunny suits, both bunny suits, that bow pattern by Sparkle Pipsy. And yeah, just let me know. Questions, comments, social media, comment below, and let me know. Thanks for stopping by. Bye!